Good Wednesday to you. A lot of news out of the Middle East today, and I want to begin right there. The Israeli Defense Forces announced late this afternoon in America that it has killed over 2,100 terrorists and operatives operating with Hamas since fighting resumed on March the 18th in Gaza. So there are clearly still a lot of bad guys trying to kill the IDF, and the IDF kills them first. Moreover, Israel announced today it is calling up 60,000 reservists for the Gaza City takeover. That's in addition to the regular army battalions already deployed in Gaza and the 20,000 reservists deployed in Gaza. I've been watching videos from every source, and I don't trust all of them, but I trust some of them. The IDF is methodically moving through the outside suburbs of the city of Gaza City and finding along the way many explosive-laden buildings that have been booby-trapped to kill IDF soldiers. Those are being blown up. There won't be much left of Gaza City until and unless Hamas surrenders in the near future. Meanwhile, the Financial Times reports this morning that inside Syria there is a battle underway to dismantle the Assad regime's narco-state. You may remember a few years ago, Brad Thor wrote a novel about Captagon manufacturing in Syria. And I spent half an hour talking to Brad about, is this real? They make Captagon, which is a sort of amphetamine, super amphetamine. Gives you a feeling of invulnerability, of false energy, superpower. And they made it for terrorists, they made it for their army, they made it to sell abroad, they sold it throughout the Caribbean. They were the Captagon capital of the world. And in fact, right now Syria is effectively 4 states. There is a Druze state near Israel, near the northern border of Israel. There is the new Islamist state run out of Damascus by al-Shara. There's an enclave run by the Turkey army. And there's an enclave run by the Syrian Kurds with support from American troops. I think it's going to stay that way for a long time. There's also a few remnants of the Assad regime in various parts in the mountains, but they will be hunted down and captured and put into captivity if they don't lay down their weapons. But the Captagon production facilities are spread throughout the entire country of Syria. And so the effort is underway to find and destroy them. And it's believed, according to the Financial Times, it's a $5 billion a year industry. It fueled the war machine of the Assads. It fueled the Assads' ill-gotten gains. It ought to be up for grabs for any victims of the Assad regime that can find the assets that Assad took with him to Russia or have around the country. But in the meantime, I'm all for the Islamists finding and destroying the Captagon economy. Finally, in Lebanon, the UN did something astonishing. First time in my memory in covering Lebanon for the 25 years I've been on the Salem radio network, the few years I've been on the Salem News Channel, and for the 10 years before my broadcast career before joining Salem. First time in 35 years, I think the UN has actually done something. They found a tunnel full of Hezbollah weaponry and explosives. And in concert with the Lebanese army, which is supposed to be disarming Hezbollah, though Hezbollah doesn't want to disarm, it's been shattered. It's been destroyed by Israel. They'll be forced to resolve. They blew up the tunnel. So cheers for the UN. They finally did something. Took them as long as I've been on the air to do something actually productive in Lebanon. So good for the UN. Props where props are due. Pope Leo, by the way, has set a day of fasting and prayers for peace in the Middle East and Ukraine on Friday for the Catholics who are listening. Other stories from the Wall Street Journal. Reading for pleasure has fallen by 40% in America over the past 20 years. Now, I've been reading for 60 years, and I read a lot. In fact, I spent 3 hours this morning, waved goodbye to the last grandchild. One more is going to come back for a little bit of period of time. But the last grandchild has left for the summer, and we will be getting back down to the Beltway soon. But this morning, I spent 3.5 hours reading. I read this new book by Alex Marlowe called Breaking the Law. It's a fabulous book. and Alex will be on, I think, next week. I read a lot of Churchill to prepare for my next sit down with Dr. Arnn on Volume 1, The Gathering Storm, of his 6-volume history of World War II. And I began to read Trey Gowdy's new novel, The Color of Death. And it's very good. I didn't know it was a novel. I thought Trey had written a book about politics. And I was asked by my producer, my booking producer, did I want to interview Trey? And I thought, well, yes, of course, he will talk politics. But his book arrives, it's a novel. Moreover, it's a crime novel. Now, I don't read crime, true crime. The only crime I read that's even remotely close is C.J. Box. But they got Nate in there, Romanowski, so it's really a thriller. So this is the first crime novel I've read since the Ed McBain series when I was in my 20s, and I'd go home from college or visit my folks, and my dad was an Ed McBain addict. So I'd thumb through. Ed McBain's were 2-day reads. And I think Trey's book is pretty good. Got me, hooked me. And so hats off to him. But I spent 3.5 hours reading this morning. Did not trundle. I'm going to give you my relief factor pitch here in a moment, but I can't claim I did anything other than sit in a quiet house today for 3.5 hours. And it was lovely. I love my grandchildren. I love my children and their spouses. We are blessed by a great family. But I really did love 3.5 hours with no noise. It's amazing. It's remarkable how wonderful that is. So when I was reading the Wall Street Journal today, U.S. government's American Time Use Survey, researchers from the University of Florida and the University College London found that of the 236,000 Americans surveyed, the proportion who read for pleasure on the average day, fell from 28% in 2003 to 16% in 2023. They count, by the way, audiobooks, which I thought, because I do a lot of my book absorption by listening now when I'm trundling, not this morning, but I do. That's tragic. That's terrible. And it's been replaced by, what they don't count, scrolling. Now, I scroll, but I limit it. I really do. I limit it. I manicure and my feed. I keep a very close watch on what comes over my X feed, and I don't do Instagram or Facebook. There are Instagram and Facebook accounts for the Hugh Hewitt Show, but that is for the benefit of those who follow the show's content. I don't want to waste time doing that. There's too many good things to read, like The Gathering Storm. I have a column coming out in Fox News tomorrow, which I want everyone to read about The Gathering Storm and why you ought to read it. But I think, make a mental note. Do a check on yourself. Have you dropped the amount of reading you're doing? If you do, you're getting dumber every day, and your brain will get mushy. Reading keeps your brain good. President Trump is considering firing a Fed official after accusation of mortgage fraud. Lisa Cook is a Biden-appointed Federal Reserve governor, and one of his housing officials has accused her of mortgage fraud. Watch that space. I have a new column out, which I'll read next hour, on Trump brings his land developer deal-making to international diplomacy. It's over at the Washington Examiner. If you want to read it right now, go to Hugh Hewitt and Washington Examiner. Also, there's a column in the Wall Street Journal by Mike Gallagher. Send Harvard's Chinese students home. Mike Gallagher being the former congressman who ran the Select Committee on China. And he's right. They ought to be going home. We ought not to be educating the leadership elite of our greatest adversary in the world. I mentioned relief factor. There it is, but let me use the open bag. I take it even on the days when I sit quietly in my house for 3.5 hours. Why? Because you got to take it every day to make sure that it levels in your body to help your body's anti-inflammatory system stay high. So there are the 4 pills. And if you're watching, you just saw me take them. It's the only natural supplement I've taken for more than 20 years, and the only one I expect to take forever. I get prescribed medicine, I'll take that, but I am not now currently being prescribed anything that is unusual or abnormal. I just want you to know, relief factor, for those of you who sit around and those of you who run around and those of you who go to the gym and those of you who swim and whatever it is you do, relief factor will get rid of the minor aches and pains that come with exercise and aging. Why? Because it works with your body's natural anti-inflammatory system. Icariin, curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. They're wonderful. Good science behind it. Worked for me. Worked for 7 out of 10 customers who want more than the starter pack. Now, the starter pack costs $19.95. That's all. Call 1-800, the number 4 in the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF, ask for the starter pack, or go to relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Find that starter pack and order it. It's less than $1 a day for 3 weeks. I think you'll stay, like I am, a daily user of Relief Factor. I want to read you one more story that came out of the Journal today in conjunction with one of my sponsors, webroot.com. And I'll tell you about webroot.com in just a second and why you need it, webroot.com/Hewitt. The reason is a Wall Street Journal story that is headed, Cyber Criminals Use AI to Create Fake Websites That Look Just Like the Real Thing. As scammers expand their targets beyond large companies, cybersecurity experts urge consumers to study web addresses carefully. And Jo-Ann Fabrics filed for bankruptcy a second time within this year in January. Scammers seized on the opportunity, the Journal reports. Within days, a flurry of imposter websites appeared with URLs like JoannLosAngeles.com and JoannClosingOnSale.shop and JoannDiscount.shop, all designed to look nearly identical to the retailer's legitimate site. The Jo-Ann scam sites, which use the company's name, branding, and product images, pretended to offer merchandise at deep discounts with the aim of stealing shoppers' credit card information and personal data. Customers who placed orders on these fake sites never received products but had their payment information compromised. The fake Jo-Ann websites exemplify the increasingly sophisticated website scams that can fool even careful consumers, according to the Better Business Bureau. Scammers are creating realistic fake websites that look identical to the originals, imitating everything from well-known retailers such as Amazon and PayPal to toll collection agencies. I get that one every day. Now, you owe $25 to this toll company. Employment portals and financial institutions. So look, it's going to get worse before it gets better. It's going to get a lot worse before the government figures out how to shut this down, because most of it is crime originating from abroad. Here's the deal. You need Webroot. And they are a sponsor of my program, webroot.com/Hewitt. If you go now, you get 50% off one of either of their offerings. They offer Webroot Essentials, and they offer Webroot Total Protection. You choose what you want, how much you want. But identity theft occurs, for reasons I just reported out of the Wall Street Journal, every 1 to 2 seconds, and usually it takes about 100 to 200 hours to repair the damage. With webroot.com, you get antivirus protection against malware, against ransomware, against phishing scams. You get a firewall, a network monitor, and a web threat shield to block bad websites before you even click. You also get protection of up to $1 million for money that is stolen from you. Dark web monitoring, which is important. Who's got your numbers? Who's got your stuff? You get a VPN for up to 10 devices, unlimited cloud backup, restoration for your PC or Mac when it's compromised. Webroot Essentials did not interrupt your daily life. It installs over 6 times quicker than competitors. So don't wait. Get 50% off Webroot Total Protection or Webroot Essentials today at webroot.com/Hewitt. That's webroot.com/Hewitt. Also want to give you the market report, brought to you a little bit early today by our friends at AmericanFederal.com. I've got busier hours 2 and 3 today, so I want to bring you the market report. There's a half hour left. But as I told you, it's boring on the market, and they have to write a story. So today they're writing the sell-off in tech continues. Not really. NASDAQ is down 0.72. But our friends at American Federal are open, and they're doing booming business. 1-800-221-7694. 1-800-221-7694. 1-800-221-7694. If you want to buy or sell precious metals, preferably gold. That's what I buy from Nick Grovich and his team at American Federal. But I do it annually. Some people do it semi-annually. Some people do it quarterly. Some people do it monthly. They diversify. And gold is a great hedge, and you ought to have a diversified portfolio: stocks, bonds, cash, dirt, and precious metals. The 5 essential ingredients to a diversified portfolio. Now, the Dow today, at this hour, there's a half hour left, is up 0.12. The S&P is down 0.22, and the NASDAQ is down 0.72. Gold, however, is up $30 an ounce to $3,389 an ounce. So not quite a percent, but better than anything else that's going on today. Gold, $3,389.40. if you're going to start buying gold or you're going to add your gold reserves, do it with Nick. Do it with his team at AmericanFederal.com. You can trust them. You absolutely can trust them. They're efficient. They're fast. They're transparent. They tell you what their commission is depending on how much you buy. Don't get left behind. Talk to Nick Rovich and his team there. Coming up after the break, I'm going to be talking about your credit cards and what Congress wants to do with your credit cards. Dick Durbin's up to it again, and we got to kill it. So don't go anywhere until there. But I promised you, I wanted to let you hear my Washington Examiner column today. It's over at the DCExaminer.com. The headline is Trump brings his land developer deal-making to international diplomacy. President Donald Trump's 72-hour stretch from last Friday's meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska to Monday's gathering of the most powerful leaders in Europe and Ukrainian President Zelensky is unrivaled in American history. No president has ever traveled as far and as fast to meet for meaningful negotiations with such a disparate group of world leaders. The president tossed aside generations of accepted wisdom about symmetry, embraced his inner developer's mantra. Nothing happens until the decision makers actually get to a real table in a real room. For as long as he's been in politics, I've urged readers, listeners, and viewers not to forget what a lifetime in high-stakes real estate development teaches those who survive that game. Daring, bold moves, the inevitability of failure, and the joy and returns of big wins. Whether residential, commercial, or mixed-use, big-time development is not for the timid. The personalities on the private sector side are enormous, and the money involved is big enough to turn the heads of even the wealthiest. Getting to yes with private partners on a land transaction is only the first step. Getting every jurisdiction involved to yes is a years-long grind that affects scores of government officials at every level. City council members, county supervisors, regional agencies dealing with coastal zones, water runoff, wildlife, and fire prevention are all involved, as are state agencies and, of course, the federal government in the form of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. That's only a partial list, by the way, of the independently operating government agencies with authority over land use projects. Trump has dealt with them all on both coasts and in between and abroad. Some of his deals have cratered. Some have been spectacular wins. That's about right for the bigs. I learned how to deal with deal makers in a 3-decade career as a land use lawyer, mostly in the western states, with an occasional exotic project far away. Lesson 1, lawyers aren't deal makers. Lesson 2, developers are usually much more gifted entrepreneurs than lawyers. Lesson 3, don't kill deals. Do everything you can to make them come to be. Successful land use lawyers learn how to deal with big personalities with big dreams, lots of cash, and cunning. They also know that risks are real and their obligation is to advise about risks candidly. Their number one job, the talking heads never considered that prior professional lives deeply enmeshed in risk-taking would produce operating rules very different from the average career politician. Read the whole thing at Washington Examiner or DCExaminer.com. Richard Hunt, old friend of the program because the Electronic Payments Coalition, which he helms, is a sponsor of my show, and I welcome them in. I know what they're all about, and I like to see Richard every now and then to check in, especially when Congress is out of town. We can take a deep breath and find out if we've driven a wooden stake through Durbin Marshall yet. Have we, Richard?
Well, Hugh, it's very close. They've been trying now for about 3 to 4 years, trying to change the way your credit cards are processed. What would hurt all your viewership. They tried once again on the latest stablecoin bill. They tried to attach their bill, and guess what? Some 4 million people across the country wrote in to their United States senator and said, don't do this. And so they have failed once again to try to attach their bill onto a non-related bill. But Hugh, Dick Durbin, and your guy, Roger Marshall, aren't going anywhere. They're doing all the bidding for Walmart and Target and Home Depot, trying to save themselves a penny on their credit card transactions. And you well know that your viewers, your listeners, will not get one single penny back in savings from Walmart or Home Depot. So look, your guys have done a terrific job educating your viewership that the draconian effects of this bill, but we are not letting up. But unfortunately, neither is Roger Marshall, neither is Dick Durbin.
No, Senator Marshall and I were doing an event for Bernie Moreno last year, and I took him aside and I said, Senator, this is a bad idea. Leave my card alone. I didn't say go to guardyourcard.com, which I should have done. He said, I'm going to call you and tell you why it's a good idea. I never got the call. I think he knows it's not a good idea. It's just screwing around with my credit card and where I get my points and where people get it. I also hear the coalition, Electronic Payments Coalition, on with the Ruthless podcast. So you guys are hitting it right into the heart of the Beltway. I mean, you know how to deliver messages. The Hugh Hewitt Show and the Ruthless podcast.
Well, look, it is that important. You remember back in 2010 when Dick Durbin went down to the well of the United States Senate and changed the way your debit card is processed and limited how much banks can charge for a product they have. And overnight, the reward points you used to get on your debit card went away. The amount of free checking accounts went away. Fraudulent tips on debit cards went up. So here he is once again. And look, you know Dick Durbin only has about a year and a half left in the United States Senate. We know he and Roger Marshall are going to try one more time. This is a very serious attempt on behalf of the big mega stores to mess with your credit card, mess with your access to credit, mess with your cash back, which thousands of people use for going back to school. And did you know, Hugh, this is a great stat. I don't have kids, so I don't have to worry about the expense of getting kids to school. But did you know that a family spends an average of $800 a year getting their kids clothes and getting their computers ready to go to school? And I guess for Ohio State University students, it's over $1,000 on top of tuition. And a lot of people across the country use cash back that they've accumulated over the years to help reduce that cost.
Richard, you never make mistakes, but you just said Ohio State. It's the Ohio State University. So I'm not surprised it's more expensive than most. It's the Ohio. But Richard, who's in favor of this and who is opposing it? Because I want the audience to understand big forces are behind Dick Durbin here. Doc Marshall got roped into this. I don't know how. But Dick Durbin is the guy who's trying to pull this off before he rides off into the sunset. Not soon enough, in my view. But who's on each side?
Well, look, Roger Marshall may have gotten roped in, but Roger Marshall is both feet in the water on this. We can't let him escape. Look, it's Walmart, it's Target, it's Home Depot, it's Amazon. It's the big corporate mega stores who are trying to push this. And the financial reports just came out. They're spending millions and millions of dollars trying to get this thing passed, just like they did back in 2010. Look, the Federal Reserve Board of Richmond even said the promised savings from Walmart and Target and Home Depot never got to your consumers. Never got there. They kept the money. And now they're here back again trying to keep the money off of the American consumer.
So they've tried to attach it to the Genius Act. They tried to attach it to another bill. Did they fail by more than the Republican margin? Was it more than 52-48? Did you get some Democrats to vote no?
Well, yeah. Yeah, look, it never came up for a vote. You remember, Hugh, this bill has never even had a hearing. Sherrod Brown of Ohio, the Ohio State, I guess, never even had a, and you well know he's very liberal, but he knew how tough this bill would be, how this would split everybody up, and he knew that would never happen. It would be bad for the credit card industry and the consumers who have a credit card. So he never had a hearing. So they're going to try again. Well,
he did one good thing. He did one good thing by not doing anything. Let me close by saying, viewers, listeners, go to guardyourcard.com. Do not lose control of your points. If Dick Durbin's around it, it's bad. I'm sorry that he's got Doc Marshall involved in this. But go to guardyourcard.com. Guardyourcard.com. Richard Hunt, good to see you again. Keep coming back. Keep the guys over at Ruthless honest. And stay true, America. Mary Catherine Ham joins me. She is the host of Getting Hammered of the Normally podcast. And she always gives a little head swiggle like this. Mary Catherine, I must have a Getting Hammered update on the nursery because you haven't done one in a while. And I want to tell you the backdrop to this. The tide went out today. The last grandchild left after 6 weeks of 3 kids, 3 spouses, 7 grandchildren, a bunk room with 4 bunks. How do you think that worked?
I feel like you probably have some property destruction to deal with.
We not only that, but we learned how to put children to bed in different rooms entirely and carry them later. That's what we learned.
That's a good idea.
How goes the nursery at the Ham household?
It's pretty good. I'm trying to think if we've sustained any major damage lately. It's like a little playhouse, and there's a fake like window in it, and they did pull the frame off that window, which, that's with their bare hands.
Yep.
I cannot help but be impressed.
I cannot help but be impressed either by the ability of 3-year-olds to antagonize each other after playing happily all day long. And so
Yeah.
I'm in amazement at the fact that you just throw two into a room with basically padded foam walls. When is Getting Hammered coming back, Mary Catherine Ham?
I'm still working on it. We'll do one of our quarterly episodes soon, and I will update you with all of these bits of news and
better
cover
than
the
semi-annual.
multitude of things that have happened.
All right, now give me the Mary Catherine Ham take on Summitry in the last, now it's 96 hours, but Trump went from Friday to Monday, and he met with more people, more big leaders, big bad guys and big good guys than anything I can ever remember, and I've been covering this since 1976. What'd you think?
I feel like diplomacy used to be like plotting and theatrical and ambiguous, and now it's very fast and theatrical and ambiguous. Like, you don't know exactly what we're getting here, but the Trump era is just different, and evaluating these things as if you are living in 2015, I think, is silly. To me, when I saw everybody gather at the White House, unified, Ukraine, Trump, Zelensky together, all of Europe, that is a blow to Putin in and of itself, to have everybody standing together there. Those are forces he wants to divide. To me, it looks like American leadership, something that we have been bereft of on the world stage, at least for the last 4 years, and certain times during the Obama era as well. Trump made this happen. He has a desire to lead. He has the will to get people together and have these discussions. He has a different calculus than other presidents do that allows him to do more, to take more chances than others might. And there are moments that I can be wary of, but appreciate the leadership, which is what I'm seeing here. And he also set the stage for himself many years ago in actions that I criticized then, right? When he was very hard on NATO in his first term, and I was worried about it. It turns out that his special brand of tough love and leadership led Europe to become more empowered, pay more for their defense, realize at the time that Putin pulled started this terrible war in Ukraine, that they needed to step up in the ways that Trump had told them. They are less dependent on Russian energy, partly because of his telling them they should be. And then they all come together after that last meeting with Zelensky, and this is what it looks like. It's a pretty astounding change.
I thought, and I said on Sean Hannity's show the other night, if you can at least get a nod to the A for effort, you've got TDS. Yeah. Now, did you catch Prime Minister Maloney's very quick aside when they were going around the table? He said, nothing has happened in this war in 3.5 years. So thank you. Yeah. And of course, who was in charge for the first 3.5 years? Mm-hmm. Biden. The empty Oval Office does not work. It was not a very subtle rebuke to what happens when you have Jake Sullivan and Tony Blinken running national security. Did it go over the heads of the national news media? Did you notice Margaret Brennan on Sunday?
Yeah, no, for the most part it does, because, and this is the Abe Greenwald line, which I'm going to shamelessly crib, which is that there are many people for whom any success, any progress, even if it's something they would formally have agreed with, if it comes at the hands of Donald Trump, it will ruin their lives. And far too many of those people are in the news media. Now, again, I can be wary of Donald Trump being in the room with Putin. I liked that there were other people there. I think he is sometimes too susceptible to the last person he spoke to and those takes. However, as Maloney herself points out, nothing has changed in 3.5 years. If we want to try different things to make this happen, Trump is a person who has the force of will to do that. And I enjoy watching an American president who is wielding American power without being ashamed of American power, which is what you get from Democratic presidents like Obama. And in Biden's case, he couldn't even do that because he, couldn't be there for these things.
So why does American media, I think I know what the Gaza Health Ministry, whatever that is, reports every day, 55,000 dead. According to them, I think at least half of those are terrorists, but I don't really know. Do we get any stats ever on Russia, Ukraine, other than when the president says some number? And I did some research. It's over 1 million total casualties, seriously wounded or dead on both sides.
I think we rarely get them. partly it's that journalists aren't great at math, and I'm not sure I want them to be messing around with numbers as we saw during COVID or during the Gaza Israel war. Things go badly when they do. They only use statistics as a way to get to Trump. Like, that's the objective. The objective is not to have critical thinking and to use these numbers to inform your audience, which is what it should be and what would actually be useful. Instead, it becomes, well, can we use crime statistics to go after Trump for going after crime in DC? Are these casualty numbers important for going after Donald Trump? If they are, we will report them. And it sounds hackish to say that that's the motivation, but largely that's the motivation.
I think Gabe Grenwell as well. Last question. Your colleague Vic Mattis stunned me on Monday when he told me my old employer, the Washington Post, is down to 90,000 print copies a day. Are you surprised by that?
I am surprised by that. I mean, I grew up in a metro daily media war. My dad was at the helm of one of the newspapers in Raleigh and Durham fighting each other. He was the Durham editor. And so I grew up in this age of like incredible just money going into these fights, incredible amounts of advertising. To hear that Washington Post, which would have been, the pinnacle of a newspaper journalist's career when I came out of college, is at 90K is wild.
They have lots more. They got 1 million digital, but they're at 90,000 paper. I just think, well, I've got lots of thoughts on that, but Mary Catherine, we'll get yours when the quarterly edition of Getting Hammered returns. I heard that promise. It's a promissory note delivered. It's under a year, so the whatever the statute that applies to writing doesn't apply. You've just got to come up with the quarterly edition of Getting Hammered. Coming up next hour, I've got all sorts of audio and video for you. Do not go anywhere. You got to see what's happening today. I do want to bring you the update from our friends at American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, ALEC.org. If you want their weekly newsletter, you go to alec.org/u. Tells you what's going on in the 50 states. Bad news, like California's attempt to change its constitution to ram through redistricting despite the, quote, progressive initiatives that have passed twice to give redistricting to an allegedly nonpartisan and in truth Democrat pact. They wanted to gerrymander, and they did gerrymander in California, but they did it behind the curtain of an independent commission. Now they need to gerrymander even harder to try and squeeze a couple more drops of juice out of the maps. And so they're going to go change the Constitution of California. It's going to pass. I'll tell you not to vote for it. And I'm on in every major market in L.A. right at noontime. I'll tell them don't vote for it, or I might tell you to vote for it. They're tricky. They're not going to present an up-down. They're going to tell you yes or no or something, whatever it is, to get the result they want. And I'll tell you the truth. You can trust me whenever we get the details. But in the meantime, get the ALEC newsletter. Go to alec.org/Hugh. alec.org/Hugh. Now, I do want to remind you about richstatespoorstates.com. They came out with the state labor policy rankings. This is how states rank 1 through 50 based upon their mobility in the workforce. How easy do they make it for people to rise? How much licensing obstacles do they put in your path? Do they have a bureaucracy that stands in your way whenever you're trying to move forward? Or do they keep Janus away? Janus rights are your right not to be compelled to join a union. Janus rights ought to be everywhere, but a lot of union-dominated states are slow-walking Janus reforms. So where are the 5 best states to work if you're a worker person and you want to rise quickly? Number 1, Arizona. Number 2, Utah. Number 3, Georgia. Number 4, Arkansas. Number 5, Florida. Same states always win with ALEC. The bottom 5, where the labor mobility is the worst, number 50 is Alaska. Number 49 is Massachusetts. Number 48 is Oregon. Number 46 is New York. And number 45 is Connecticut. So I'm telling you, if you're living in a blue state, poverty is headed your way. If you're in the middle class, you're certainly not going to make it to the upper middle class. Capital is fleeing those states. They're moving to red states. People are moving to red states. They're voting with their feet. And they're going to get red and redder, and the census is going to pick it up, and the Electoral College is going to change. The Democrats' last gap is coming in 2026 and 2028. Follow what's going on in the States. Go get the newsletter every week. Head to alec.org/Hugh, alec.org/Hugh, or go to richstatespoorstates.com and get the free copy of where your state ranks on all sorts of metrics. Lee Zeldin joined Sean Hannity last night. Lee Zeldin is the extraordinary administrator of the EPA, and he gave an update to Sean about everything going on at what is the most miserable agency in the United States. When Richard Nixon signed it into law in 1972, I believe, he was concerned with clean water, clean air, making sure that people didn't dump pollutants into rivers, people didn't. It was smog in LA, it was visible air pollution. Now it's become an instrument of tyranny in the hands of unelected bureaucracy. But Lee Zeldin, Andy Wheeler, and Scott Pruitt did a good job in the first 4 years of Donald Trump. Lee Zeldin went in there with a zeal that is unmatched. Here's his first cut number 2 of Lee Zeldin talking to Sean Hannity last night.
You talk about saving a lot of money. What is that number?
Over $29 billion of grants I've canceled.
$29 billion of grants.
Our operating budget annually is about $10 billion. We've canceled over $29 billion. $27 billion of it was the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, part of the Inflation Reduction Act when President Biden had one-party control of Congress. And it was filled with self-dealing and conflicts of interest, unqualified recipients, reduced agency oversight, money going through pass-throughs, the dollar getting diluted. And if the argument is going to be made that a dollar should get spent to remediate an environmental issue, then spend it on remediating an environmental issue. Instead, they're giving it to their friends, former Biden and Obama officials and Democratic donors. You know, President Trump talks about Stacey Abrams as one linked NGO to her that received $2 billion.
Is that true?
Yes, in 2023.
And it was going out the door.
Yes, in 2023, that NGO received $100. In 2024, they got $2 billion from the Biden EPA. They had to complete training in their grant agreement, page 7, that says they have 90 days to complete training called How to Develop a Budget. Yet, in the first 21 days, they can start spending the money, billions of dollars. Now, you could ask all sorts of great questions about where the money goes once it goes through pass-throughs. And deliberately, by design, I won't have answers to basic questions.
So this pass-throughs, I mean, you have to be almost an investigator to see the bank shots of where this money goes, right? I mean, that's part of what you're trying to find out. Are you?
That is, by the way, of course, Brett Baer, not Sean Hannity. I was wrong about that. It's a staggering amount of money. And by bank shot, what Brett means is if you're playing basketball and you bank it off, you really, sometimes it's an easy shot, sometimes it's hard. But it's also like hitting a 3-wood from behind a tree. You have no idea where it's going to go. And the pass-throughs mean the money goes to X, and X gives it to Y and Z, and Y and Z give it to A and B give it to C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and it goes on and on and on, and you can't find it. It's money laundering. Money laundering on the left. Second question, Lee Zeldin, continuing on with Brett Baer here, cut number 3.
The American public elected President Trump to ensure that we were heeding their economic concerns, promoting consumer freedom, to help unleash a golden age of American prosperity. All these different agencies, including EPA, have so many powers, equities that allow us to deliver on that Trump mandate. So for us here at EPA, our core mission is protecting human health and the environment. We want to power the great American comeback, which means, as President Trump has spoken about, clean air, land, and water for all Americans. But we can also help unleash energy dominance, make America the AI capital of the world, advance cooperative federalism, permitting reform, bringing back American auto jobs. These are also all demands that the American public voted for.
You see, I've asked my booking producer to track down Administrator Zeldin. I wrangled with EPA for 27 years, Region 9. Felicia Marcus, old friend of mine from college, lefty. We were always civil to each other. We're friends. She's always saying no, and I'm always saying, why? You don't have the power to say no. And she said no. And EPA was that way. They didn't want people to develop. They're a no-growth agency under Democrats, and they burrowed in. By burrowing in, Tyler O'Neill over at, I can't remember, Tyler's at Daily Signal. Tyler done a whole series on burrowing in where former lefties come in as political appointees and they convert into career government people. and they do left-wing stuff regardless of how the American people want the government to go, which is to the right. Scott Bessent is the Secretary of the Treasury, joined Laura Ingraham last night. Cut number 4.
The security guarantees go back to Friday, President Trump's meeting with President Putin in Alaska. And President Trump has wanted to end this conflict that never would have started if he had been president. And he convinced President Putin about the security guarantees, that it is what the Europeans call coalition of the willing. The U.S. will not have boots on the ground, may provide some kind of air support, satellite support. And then yesterday, President Trump came in with a plan. He doesn't do these things randomly, and he knew what he had to do with President Zelensky. It was a very good meeting.
That wasn't flattery. The flattery argument on the part of NBC.
Laura, please. It goes back to, again, in Alaska, that President Trump made a mistake inviting President Putin on U.S. soil, or the flattery. It's all the, they're demeaning themselves because President Trump wants to be a peacemaker. He's done 6 peace deals. He knows how to do this. He went in with a plan. We had a long pregame in the Oval beforehand. He had a strategy the whole time. And I don't think it's flattery. I actually think it's deference. Because they understand that President Trump is the only person in the world who can stop this conflict.
Good for Secretary Bessent. He went on to talk about Ukraine some more with Laura Ingraham. Cut number 5.
Since he got into the Oval on January 20th, President Trump has been talking about not sending any more money to Ukraine. We did this economic partnership, which once this conflict stops, could pay off big for the American taxpayer. We can recoup our investment. If Ukraine does well, we do well. If the conflict stops, and the conflict's got to stop for the economic partnership to really kick in, we're going to start with some investments now. So I think President Trump is very vigilant. Right now, we are selling arms to the Europeans, who are then selling them on to the Ukrainians.
Scott Bessent is really turning out to be an all-star, along with Doug Burgum. Doug Burgum was on Fox Business yesterday making this point. Cut number 8.
Well, yes, and President Trump has been brilliant in his execution of the combination of the statecraft and the trade policies, because he understood when he was running for office that you couldn't separate energy policy from prosperity at home, and you can't separate it from peace abroad. And in selling energy to our friends and allies so they don't have to buy from our adversaries is effectively the summary of all of his strategy with the EU. I mean, with the EU committing with this great trade deal, $750 billion of purchases of U.S. energy over the next 3 years. That's why they're all sitting around, and it would take 6 months or a year to plan a G7. He calls the leaders on Saturday and says, hey, come on over. I'll see you on Monday. They're all in his office sitting around the Resolute desk. And part of the reason there is because the U.S. is going to be their primary energy supplier, and they can finally get off of Russian energy sources. And again, this is common sense, and President Trump's leadership literally is bringing prosperity at home and peace abroad.
Meanwhile, Special Envoy Witkoff, also on Fox, talking about why the meeting went so long with Putin in Alaska on Friday. Cut number 6.
We're in a negotiation, mediating, and I think we're going to be very successful because of the leadership of President Trump. But there were concessions almost immediately made on the part of the Russians in the first meeting in Alaska. And, part of getting those concessions was learning whether we were going to be able to see the Russians prepared to be more accommodating. And it was clear that's a bit of intelligence that's really important for us to see. And the president fleshed that out almost immediately. And that's what led to the length of the meeting. We stayed there for quite some time because we actually made progress on how we might get to a peace deal. A ceasefire deal is very, very easy to break because it doesn't have all the ingredients attached to it. A peace deal is much more different. It's sturdy. And the president began to sense in this meeting in Alaska that we had a lot of the precursors agreed to for a peace deal. So why not pursue an entire peace deal? And of course, in this sort of nutty world, he got criticized for that. I sat and watched it and marveled at it, to tell you the truth.
That's why I wrote yesterday and again today, unless you were in both meetings, and the special envoy Witkoff was, you have no idea what went on. And if you're telling people what went on and you weren't there, you're lying, and you know you're lying. You're guessing, and you're not telling people that you're guessing. And your guesses have been ill-informed, New York Times, Washington Post, and others, for a long time. Maybe just shut up and report on how long the meeting went. As you know, the only big story underway in America right now that is purely American has to do with redistricting in Texas and redistricting in California, and whether redistricting of congressional seats will follow in other states. Joining me to talk about redistricting is a redistricting expert, former California State Assemblyman John Campbell, former California State Senator John Campbell, former California Congressman John Campbell, son of California. His children are all in California. He has fled across the state line because he's so embarrassed by the fact that the California mess is on him, including the maps and the redistricting commission that runs California. So, Congressman, since you know how to redraw lines to save yourself and everybody else, tell us about redistricting in California and how we got to this point and what the Democrats are doing in Sacramento.
Okay. Understand that redistricting is what happens within a state. And a lot of people may think it's unconstitutional, blah, blah, blah. The Constitution provides for allocating members of Congress amongst the states. But within the states, how they get allocated is up to the state. So states can do it however they want to do it. And it is an inherently, let's first of all set aside and understand, it is an inherently political process. And it is not just...
There are two rules. Can I interrupt you? There are two rules.
Sure.
Every district has to have the same number of people at the conclusion of the process, and you may not use race to draw districts unless the Voting Rights Act compels you to do so, and that might even go away. It doesn't apply to California. But in California, two rules. Every district's got to have the same number of people. You may not use race. Go forth.
And that's true. That's true in every state, actually. You're right. That's a federal law with that you have to do that as well. So there is that. But it's inherently political. And I went through several redistrictings in my career. And understand, again, what every individual member of your state house, your state senate, and Congress has a personal agenda. They have a goal. They have something they want to do. I'm in the state house or the state assembly in California. I want to be in the state senate. So when we draw lines, I'm looking at what the state senate line district is going to be. Will that be good for me to run in, or will it make it difficult for me to win based on where my current district is? Same with Congress, same with everything else. Let's just say, I wouldn't call them fights, but the discussions and debate between members over districts. I remember with another, when I was in Congress and redistricted, that they were perhaps going to draw me with another current congressman at the time, Dana Rohrabacher, in the same district, and Dana was petrified about running against me, and I didn't particularly want to run against him. So we were hoping that there would be districts that we could run in separately, and we did. So I just mentioned this, that there's a lot of personal agendas here, a lot, and that has nothing to do with party. That's just personal agendas. Okay, but the other aspect of political does have to do with party, is drawing districts that benefit my party. And in California, forever, the legislature has drawn the districts with the approval of the governor. Now, there was a fight back between your friend and mine, then Governor Pete Wilson, and a Democratic legislature back in 1990, redistricting, where they couldn't agree. The legislature drew Democratic maps, and the governor wouldn't sign them. And the law at that time required that to happen. So what happened is he actually turned it over to the governor did in the legislature, to some judges to draw the districts fairly, which are probably the only fair districts there's been in the state of California in my lifetime. But those
for
were
10 years.
In 1990. And they made sense, and the House districts were nested within the Senate district.
Explain that, because that's how it should be everywhere. They should be nested.
Well, yes. There are always more state house or state assembly members than state senate in every state except for Nebraska, which is the only unicameral legislature where they have only a state senate. So taking Nebraska aside, all the other states, there are more state house or state assembly than senators. In California, it's double. You have 80 assembly members and 40 senators. When they were nested, they drew the Senate districts first, and then they just split them in half. And there were 2 assembly districts in each Senate district, which, as you say, totally makes sense. But that's because this was drawn by a group of judges who were actually impartial, unlike many of the district court judges making rulings on President Trump today. So they were actually impartial. So they did that. But since then, it was drawn by the legislature and the governor. Arnold Schwarzenegger comes in, and Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, always prided himself, still does, as being a Republican on the ballot, an R after his name, etc. But the ultimate moderate Republican, the ultimate
glass jaw Republican, glass jaw.
Okay, I often said he was a Republican that was like if politics is a river and there's a left bank and a right bank, he was always out dead in the center of the river. And unfortunately, what that does is the river takes you downstream unless you have some anchors to one side or the other. And he eventually lost those, but that's for a separate topic. But he set up a redistricting commission, feeling that taking it out of the hands of the legislature and putting it in a commission would make it more fair and more even, and it wouldn't benefit either Democrats or Republicans. Now, unfortunately, the makeup of the commission, because the legislature was involved with this and everybody approved it, favored Democrats. So the redistricting commission in California has favored Democrats since then. But it was put in by Arnold Schwarzenegger before the people. The legislature was not going to give up their power voluntarily. So Arnold took it to the people with a ballot proposition, and the people voted it in because of this sell that, well, it's going to be independent, won't favor either Republicans or Democrats. So that is the law in California today. When most states...
How did it work? How did it work? 2 minutes to the break. How did they work?
Well, there was supposedly a certain number of Republicans, I forget how many, 20 people or something, Republicans, Democrats, some from the public, some from this, some from that, some from unions, some from whatever, and independents, and they would sit and draw the lines. And that's the way it was put together. But it had a...
And it favored Democrats, didn't it? It favored Democrats in the end.
Absolutely favored Democrats, and that's part of the reason that Arnold was able to get it through. But you could argue it was better than the legislature doing it. But so California with an initiative process, like most states with an initiative process, if you pass something by initiative, it can only be repealed by initiative. So the legislature and the government and the governor cannot remove an act put in place by the people. Only the people can do that. So what Gavin Newsom has to do here is take his new redistricting back to the people for a vote in order to overturn the commission and in order to make these changes in the middle of the 10-year cycle, in the middle of the decade. So that is what he is trying to do. And I know we're getting close to the break, but when we get back from the break,
when we come back,
looked at the districts. I have looked at the districts and seen what they've drawn and what they're trying to do.
Don't tell us. It's called a tease. That's a tease.
I understand. So I will explain. I will explain how they. There's 52 congressmen, I think, in members of Congress in California now. And I think there's only 9 Republicans. And with this, they think they can take it down to 3 or 4 out of 52.
Would you check the map and find out
how they do it?
And find out if Ken Calvert's going to survive, because to take Ken Calvert out of the Congress when he's chairman of the subcommittee of appropriations and chairman of the defense subcommittee is crazy. I hope he survives. Stay tuned. John Campbell will give us the answers. Texas is going to redraw its lines by the legislature, as is appropriate. They did it once before. California is going to amend its constitution to screw Republicans. What do the maps look like, Congressman John Campbell, formerly a state representative, formerly a state senator, formerly a California congressman, deeply embedded in the machinations of the Golden State? What do the maps do?
They are pretty messy. But so what you do, and I'm going to say this from the perspective of Democrats, because that's who's doing this in California. What you want to do is take where you have pockets of Republicans and divide them. So you break them up. And where you have pockets of Democrats, you divide them as well in order to move them to where there are pockets of Republicans and make the numbers work so you have majority Democrats in more and more places. So let's take one of the most egregious examples, I thought, when I looked at the map, was the very north area of California, up against the Oregon border and inland all the way to the border with Nevada. That is very red country. That is conservative country. There is a guy serving in the legislature, Doug LaMalfa, represents that area. He's there in Congress now. He's represented it on and off, in one office or another for 20 years, I believe, if not longer. Anyway, they take that area and run a finger down to San Francisco, which is hundreds of miles, down to San Francisco to pick up Democrats in Marin County and a few other places where obviously they don't need them in San Francisco. They have there's 85% of the people in San Francisco are Democrats, something like that. So you take some of those Democrats from the Bay Area and run them up in there in order to dilute the Republican control of that district. That's the most egregious one I saw. But right now I'm sitting in Newport Beach, California, talking to you. Newport Beach is not that huge a city. I think 75,000 people. It's never been split up in redistricting, but it's solidly Republican. I used to get 75% of the vote here, 80% of the vote here. They split it in half, and they put half of it up with Long Beach, California. Again, moving it 50 miles up the coast to have where there's a bunch of Democrats in LA that they don't need, and to dilute Newport Beach, and then take the other half of it and move it up with Norwalk, another town in Los Angeles County, whole different county, in order to take the Republican effect of Newport Beach, split it up, dilute it, and mess it around. So those are just some examples. I mean, there's one district goes along the coast of California. I mean, just inland, just a tiny little bit, and goes and picks up some Democrats along the coast and then shoots inland to pick up some of the Republicans in the Central Valley, which is farming area. And I believe every major agricultural district in the country now is Republican. I'm sure there's some in Massachusetts that aren't, maybe in Massachusetts that aren't, but outside of that, I think they're all pretty much Republican now. So you dilute it that way. So that's the kind of thing they're doing. Now, when I mentioned before the break that people have personal interests in this, and there are some Democrats currently in office where they're taking some of their Democrats away, and they're making their districts a little more competitive, not in danger, but more competitive. So again, you're a member of Congress and you're sitting in a district where you get 65% of the vote because it's so heavily Democratic. That is wonderful. You don't have to campaign that much. You can raise money and give money to the Democratic Party, and that helps you get committee chairs and all kinds of things like that. It's a wonderful place to be. I know that's exactly the kind of position I was in, only just as a Republican. Now you take away some of that Democrats, some of that Democratic member of Congress's Democrats and put them in another district. And now instead of 65%, I'm going to get 55. Okay, I'm still going to win. Looks good, solid, but I might have to campaign because I don't want to be one of those members of Congress, and there's plenty of them, that just assume you're going to win, don't campaign, don't spend any money, don't do anything, and then all of a sudden.
Are we talking about Maxine Waters?
You wake up on election day with a surprise. And so there's some of those I know that I've heard that are not particularly happy with this redistricting because they're going to have to work. They'll probably win. The Cook report will have it either maybe take it from a solid Democrat to a lean Democrat. And that means, they have to work a little harder, they have to spend a little money, they have to do whatever. And they don't want to do that. And so they may not be excited in that. So
52
I know
seats.
some of them aren't. I know some of them aren't.
52 seats. Before we go to break, how many will be Republican if this passes come 2026?
If this passes, I think what they're planning is that there will be 4.
Down from 9.
Yes.
4 out of 52.
Correct. And those 4 they're allowing, those will be heavy Republican. They'll just leave them there alone.
Is one of them Ken Calvert?
To make some of the others. No. Because he had a difficult race both of the last 2 cycles. and there's a lot of Democrats around him, it's easy to flip that district, and they'll do that.
You got to come back and tell me who's going to survive. I'll be interested to know that. As you know, California is going to attempt to redistrict via initiative the Republican Party in California out of existence or down to 3 or 4 Republicans. Congressman John Campbell, a veteran of the California congressional delegation, though now retired, has been studying the maps. Who survives John Campbell in the Republican delegation?
And to be honest with you, I'm not sure exactly. I've looked. I haven't looked at all 52 seats very carefully. There's clearly a couple of seats in the Central Valley of California, which is where the agriculture area, one of the Republican bastions, that will survive. And there probably will be another one, Orange County or Los Angeles or San Diego County, somewhere around there, are probably where the surviving ones will be. Just looking at the map generally, but exactly who's in those, I don't know, because one of the things that happens is it's musical chairs. Somebody gets drawn out of a seat and they want to run in the seat that's next to them, and everyone assumes you have to live in your congressional district. You do not. At least not in California, you don't.
No, not anywhere. It's not a constitutional requirement. You have to be in the state.
Yeah, you just have to live in the state. So therefore, even though I might not live in this district, if they draw my district away from me and it becomes Democrat and the ones next to me looks like maybe I can win it, I might go over there and run against another Republican because I want to stay in Congress. And so, again, personal agendas don't ignore them. They are important. And
can I play a clip for you? This is the Assembly Election Chair, Gail Pellerin, talking to KCRA, Channel 3, NBC in Sacramento with Ashley Zavala, cut number 10.
Who exactly is responsible for the maps? Who do we tell California voters drew these?
Well, so the maps have been posted on our website since 8 o'clock yesterday. The lines are very clear where people can go on and observe and see what we're doing. There are adjustments. Many counties and many districts are not getting touched at all. So,
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. My question is, who is responsible for the maps specifically? Who do we let California voters know are responsible for the maps that they are being presented with?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a collaboration.
There was several people involved.
Who specifically?
I don't have the full list right here with me, but we can certainly get that to you. But these maps are transparent. They're there for voters.
But
to
names
see.
of the people. The names of the people, the organizations. I mean, Governor Gavin Newsom promised that no special interests or this would be transparent. This would not be done in a back room.
We're definitely.
So we're trying to ascertain in the very short amount of time that you have to deliberate this, who exactly are the maps responsible for?
There's a lot happening very quickly, and the folks that were drawing the maps went back to the Independent Redistricting Commission's testimony and what they heard during their time when they were deliberating this, and they themselves ran out of time to do the work that they needed to do. And so we're basing these on the Voting Rights Act, and we're looking at really bringing the voters into this process, and that's why we're going to an election on November 4th, because at the end of the day, the voters' voice is what matters.
We're asking because voters back in 2008 and 2010 took the power away from politicians to draw maps because they did not like that it was an incumbent protection plan. So we just need to know. I mean, that's why we're asking.
These are definitely unusual times. We are no longer governing in a democracy. We're governing in an authoritarian government. We are seeing things that we care so deeply about in California. We have education, food for children, our immigrant community, our LGBT community. They are getting decimated by this administration. This is an all-out assault on California's democracy and the rights and values. So we have to move quickly, but we are bringing the voters on to this process. We're letting them know the maps have been posted on the website. We have this election on November 4th, and at the end of the day, the voters will decide what is important to them and whether they want to adjust these maps to give California the voice it needs in Congress.
But can any of you answer whether or not were state lawmakers involved in drawing the maps? Any state lawmakers at all?
Not to my knowledge.
But who adjusted them last night at 8 p.m.?
It was my understanding that they were by 8 a.m. They were out there.
No,
there was a collaboration, but we can get to the people that actually did that work.
So then why does the legislation say the detailed maps are prepared by the Assembly and State Senate Elections Committees?
So The reality is that it was a collaboration, and we can get those specifics, but I think what's most important is the maps are out there for people to see, to evaluate, to make a judgment on. The lines are the lines.
Madam Chair, but
so we are that
when you consume something, don't you want to know who makes it? When you are presented with something, don't you want to know where it's coming from? Don't voters deserve
When
to know
I go to a
that?
restaurant, I don't need to meet the chef. I just enjoy the food.
Senator John Campbell, what do you think about that?
Oh, there's so much garbage in that interview. And that's an NBC affiliate in Sacramento. Wow, good for her. I mean,
Good for her.
Yeah, normally these local, particularly in California, these local TV news people just go in and say, give me your Democrat talking points. I'll ask you a question. What are your Democrat talking points? Go. And that's all they spew out. Wow, good for her. And follow up and follow up. They never follow up when they don't answer the question, which she didn't. So good for her, first of all. But what a whole bunch of garbage that no legislators were involved. Oh, I mean, every legislator, every Democratic legislator was involved. Every one, I assure you. And so it's absolute complete garbage on that. But let's talk about what I think we mainly heard there. Remember, they have to pass this. The people do have to vote it, and they're planning to put it on the ballot in November. It's going to cost $200 million to have a special election to put this thing on. And people have said, well, but the state's in a deficit. It's borrowing money. It's doing all this kind of stuff. How could you spend this $200 million? And Gavin said the same thing she said. Democracy is on the ballot. We have an authoritarian government in Donald Trump in Washington, and democracy is on the ballot, and we must save it. There is no price on democracy. And that's their quote, their thing they're saying. So this is their sell. Their sell, I mean, she started out with the sell of, well, the redistricting commission ran out of time. And we're actually doing what they want. And so it's really independent. It's really this. And I think that's not going to work. I have a
She
feeling,
ended up saying, I don't care about the chef. I just ordered the food. Stand by. I got to talk about relief factor. Then I want your final thoughts on this after the break. John Campbell will be back. I want to tell you about relief factor because I'm in the relief factor studio. I'm no longer in the California relief factor studio because I left the state because of idiocy like this. But relief factor came with me and built me a new studio. I take it every day. And after 6 weeks of grandchildren, including a high tide period of all 7 grandchildren, all 3 kids and their spouses, and the fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I did nothing today. I didn't do any exercise. I didn't need my relief factor, but I took it anyway in hour number 1, and I want you to try it because if you can get through 6 weeks with the grandkids, I tell you, that's because you're taking relief factor. 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF. Or go to their website, find that starter pack, $19.95. Congressman Campbell ought to do that because you got grandkids too. ReliefFactor.com. Find the starter pack at ReliefFactor.com or call 1-800 number 4 and the word relief. I wanted to give Congressman John Campbell, formerly a representative from California for 12 years, also a California state senator, a California representative, a California born and bred, a California boy who left, a last word. What do you think about this hijinks and shenanigans? 3 minutes, Congressman.
Yeah, it's absolutely terrible. But let's talk about the prospect of where does it go from here. So on the ballot in November, spend $200 million to do it. Polling is showing it's doing very badly. That when people are told what actually it is, which is that it's removing the redistricting commission that the people voted in 2010 or whenever it was, and 2008, I think, but that it is replacing that with ones drawn by the governor and the legislature. It's about 65% no. So that they've got a real uphill battle. So
are they going to disguise it and use bad language to confuse voters like they do sometimes?
That's for sure. That's for sure. Rob Bonta, who's the Attorney General in California, will say that this is well, like she did in that clip you played before the break. They'll probably come and say this is a reimagination of the redistricting commission's maps, which they didn't have time to draw. And that's what it is. So they're going to do that to confuse.
But will
the
yes mean yes and no mean no?
Don't know that either.
See, that's one of their best tricks.
It is. It is one of their tricks. And obviously with their base, they could come out and say, we're saving democracy because we're doing stuff against Donald Trump. The other big thing they have, well, let me say one problem they're going to have. Arnold Schwarzenegger who has been quiet politically since his governorship in the end, his approval rating was like 25% or 22%. So he did not enjoy his last year or so as governor. In fact, he spent most of it in his home, didn't even go to Sacramento. So he's been away from politics for some time. He came out on this very strongly and said, I'm against this and I'm going to do everything I can to fight this. We put this in when I was governor and we should not have the legislature drawing gerrymandered maps again. Don't ignore the significance of that. That will have some
If we can get
impact.
Pete and Arnold, if you can get Pete and Arnold at an event, I mean, you really could score some points.
Yeah, but here's the biggest problem. Elections in California are rigged. They've been rigged
Right.
since 2012. And so they will mail out 20 million mail-in ballots. I know of plenty of people who their kids have been gone for years, they still get their ballot. Their mother's been dead for years, they still get the ballot. I've moved a bunch, so I don't know whether my ballot in the place I used to live in California is still showing up and somebody's voting it. It might.
Mine stopped 4 years ago, 6 years after I left. I got ballots for 6 years.
Yeah,
Well, we
and
are out of
illegal
time on this, but
illegal
I'm going to
aliens get 'em
beat
too.
I'm going to beat this to death with your help over the next 5 months. So stand by. It's you. You made this problem. You own this problem. You've got to fix this, John Campbell. No more car shows for you. No. You've got to stop this. It's all on you. I'll be right. Follow him on Twitter, JBT Campbell, and tell him it's on him. If you've listened to the show for even a week, or maybe just a month, you'll know that I've been in this business for 35 years. You'll also know that while I'm a Buckeye, while I went to college at Harvard, I moved to California in 1978. Met the fetching Mrs. Hewitt as a Golden State girl, married her. We left in 1980. I went to law school. She went back to D.C. After our marriage, we stayed in D.C. But we went back to California in 1989, stayed till the end of 2015. We moved back to Virginia. So I have lived in California almost 30 years. Most of my broadcast career, 20 out of 30 years of it, was done from California studios. And I am on in every major market in California. From San Francisco to the Central Valley to LA to San Diego to the Inland Empire, I am everywhere. In California, indeed, up along the far northern coast, Redwood City. My phone number is 1-800-520-1234. And you know that from the time, if you're an old-timer, you go back to my KFI days, AM 640, more stimulating talk radio. I haven't been with them since 1992. But, you know, I did 5 years with them, and I did 10 years with PBS KCET Channel 28, and then the rest of the time with Salem. And I'm going to talk only to Californians now. 1-800-520-1234. Open up the phones, Harley. What do you think about what Gavin's going to do? 1-800-520-1234. Now, my screen shows that the phones are closed, so I may have to, yeah, they're open, so you're going to have to tell me the callers when they call. While Harley is screening, because Dwayne is coming back from the Beltway where he redid my Beltway studio over the course of 3 days, so Harley's a little short-handed. But you go ahead and call 1-800-520-1234. Let me tell you about a couple of sponsors while we get ready. First of all, Consumer Cellular. I want you to remember the number, 1-800-411-4454. You can have savings without sacrifice on your cell phone bill. 1-800-411-4454. Indeed, you can have extraordinary savings with your cell phone bill. 1-800-411-4454. Or you can go to consumercellular.com/Hugh. If you call 1-800-411-4454, make sure you use my code HUGH25. Because that, in addition to your extraordinary savings just by switching from Big Cellular to Consumer Cellular, you'll get $5 off each of your first 5 monthly invoices. And I want you to know, especially if you're over 50 and you want unlimited data, Consumer Cellular will give you two lines for $60, unlimited data. That's a lot more. Get your cell phone bill out before you call. You don't have to. I mean, you can call them, you can go online, talk to them. They only have a one-button reach. meaning you hit one button, dial, hit 1, hit 2, hit 3, hit 4. And with one button, you'll be talking to a real live person in America. They keep all their service centers here in the United States, so you'll know what time it is. And call them, 800-411-4454, but get your cell phone bill out first and find out how much you're spending on cell phones, because they will save you money. And that 2 unlimited lines for $60 if you're 50 years and older, you're not going to beat that anywhere. That's $30 a line. And you can keep your phone, you can keep your number, all that good stuff. Just call them, please. ConsumerCellular.com/Hugh, and be sure to use the code HUGH25. And I'll give you a couple more minutes to call, 1-800-520-1234. And I'll tell you, Mike and El Segundo. Hello, Mike. How are you?
Hi, Hewitt. Well, hailing here from the Democratic People's Republic of California, just like the North Korea calls themselves the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, which is a four-way lie. I looked at the, I think it was Assembly Constitutional Amendment 8. I think the number was 8, ACA 8. I looked at it. I need to look at the other two bills to read them online at the state government legislature website here in California. And I was shocked. What the Democrats did is they did a gut and amend, meaning they took an existing bill and deleted almost all the text and then replaced it all with brand new text, so they're not going back to the beginning like they're supposed to do in the legislative process. And even worse, the original bill, what it would have done would be to put on the ballot a measure to take away our right, our existing right, to vote on Supreme Court, state Supreme Court justices and appellate court justices. That if an incumbent files that they want to rerun, they will not appear on the ballot automatically as they currently do, but that there'd have to be a gathering of signatures of an unspecified amount where the state legislature can set that amount and make it impossible.
Well, I thought the redistricting, Rob, let me interrupt you. I thought the redistricting amendment was a standalone redraw of the districts.
No, they have a Assembly Constitutional Amendment. I think it's ACA, I think the number's 8, I believe, and they have, I think it's 2 other bills. I think an Assembly bill and a Senate bill. So it's, I believe, 3 pieces of legislation combined.
Well, let's focus for a moment on the constitutional amendment. Are your friends and family aware of what's going on?
I'm making them aware. And what people have to understand is the Democrat Party rules with an iron fist. They are, what, in my opinion, an emerging communist dictatorship. If you look at everything they've been doing, they're not democratic. For example, the voters turned down a statewide ballot measure for rent control. So the Democrats in the state legislature, supermajority, and Gavin Newsom, they went and passed a statewide rent control law in spite of the voters turning it down. Same thing for the death penalty. The voters overwhelmingly, well, I'll say this, not overwhelmingly, but by a substantial majority, they voted down abolishing the death penalty. So Gavin Newsom issued an executive order to dismantle the gas chambers to make it impossible to have executions. I think he issued a reprieve to all the murderers and mass murderers on death row. The Democrat Party is not democratic. They are a Marxist party. They are actually cultural Marxists because they've been passing laws to promote sex change surgeries and drugs on children as young as age 12. Behind the parents' back, and if they find out without their permission or consent, they'll take the
Well,
kids
you're
away from
obviously
the
a very
parents.
informed voter, Rob. But most Californians aren't. I live there 2 months out of the year when I'm teaching. And I only teach every other year now. I might go back to full-time teaching when I retire from broadcasting. But kids are not involved in politics like I was when I was young. And they go to the beach. They don't care. California's falling apart. They don't care. You know that homes are not being rebuilt in the Pacific Palisades and in Altadena? They're not being rebuilt.
Right, Hugh, by the way, I've listened to you since you were on KFI. I've listened to you for...
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, you're wonderful. Oh, yeah, and Dennis Prager when he had the Religion on the Line show on KFI.
Oh, you are an old-timer. You're a 35-year veteran.
Absolutely.
You're a DiMaggiati.
My mother raised me. My mother, when I was very young, elementary school, she had me listening with her to talk radio. And you learn so much on talk radio, even than you learn in school or college in many cases. It's just incredible. So my strongest motivation is for liberty. My mother, I'm a miracle baby. I'm lucky I've ever been born. Same with my wife. My mother escaped with her family when she's 5 years old from communist Russia. She escaped from the pogroms under communism, where they were doing more of the same. What the Tsar was doing, mass murder of Jews simply because they were Jewish. And my mother was subjected to Dr. Mengele Nazi-style experiments in a communist Russian prison as a Jewish child. And you will not read about this in the history books or learn about it in school, but it happened, I know, because my
Oh,
mother
the
had to
pogroms of
start
Russia
about her
are yeah, you have to know something because the Holocaust, of course, rightfully blots out all other crimes, but the pogroms in Russia were horrible.
really horrible. And there are Jews living all over the world from Russia who escaped the pogroms in South America and China, just all over. Anyway, so then my wife, her father is a survivor of a communist torture prison in China. He was born in California, but when he was young, his parents decided to move back to where they had come from, to China, and take the family with them. Huge mistake. The communists started the revolution. They were mass murdering everyone. By the time they were done, under Mao Zedong, a hero of the left-wing Democrats, they murdered between 70 million and 100 million innocent
Yeah,
civilians.
Mao is the greatest murderer of the 20th century. Absolutely. So, Rob, what are you doing to get people involved in stopping this? Because it will crush any hope of California ever reforming itself.
I know, and those of us who worked, so much of our lives to own a home in California and paying the huge taxes, it would be horrible to be forced to become a refugee, just as my mother became a refugee from communist Russia. It'd be terrible to have to become a refugee from communist California. We have to fight. What I'm doing is obviously calling talk radio, but that only reaches people who are more likely to be conservative or at least middle of the road. I'm also talking to friends, to neighbors. I'm going to try writing letters to the editor of the local newspaper.
Call the Central Committee. Which county? El Segundo. So you're in LA County.
Yeah, that's
the Republican
County.
Yeah, the Republican Party in LA isn't dead yet. Call them up and offer to help. Rob, Godspeed.
Yeah,
Thank you for listening all these years. I really, genuinely appreciate it. That's a long-time listener right there. I'll come back for more calls from California, 1-800-520-1234, 1-800-520-1234. Only Californians like Rob, people who know what they're talking about. Tell me what you think about Gavin Newsom's attempt to destroy democracy in California. Taking calls only from California. Brendan in Fallbrook, you got to call back because I had a Fallbrook caller and a San Clemente caller lined up. I was living in San Clemente in 1978 working for RN when the fetching Mrs. Hewitt was living in Fallbrook. She's a Fallbrook warrior. When we went to a Pete Wilson fundraiser on the shore of Mission Bay and met each other and have been together ever since. And so it was perfect. But then Brendan hung up during the break. How about you, Rich in San Clemente? Which part of the wonderful town are you living in?
I live in Forester Ranch, just off the beach. We love it here. I've been a resident of California for 60 years. And thank you for bringing attention to our beautiful but beleaguered state. I wanted to bring up that it is the height of hypocrisy for that Democratic representative to say that she's protecting democracy when we only have 9 representatives and we represent over 40% of the electorate, and I believe it's higher than that because I also believe the elections are rigged in California. But the point I want to bring up, Hugh, that nobody has mentioned, and I'm living this, is the amount of families, the cost of living in California has broken up, whether it be older people, retirees who have to move out of the state because of the cost of living here in retirement, or our children, as in our case. I have a son with my 4 grandchildren who have had to move to Las Vegas. But a fixer-upper here in South Orange County starts at $1.5 million here.
Yep.
And I have a daughter. She's severely disabled, 24 years old. So we cannot move out of the state because all her doctors and medical support is here. And I don't want to move. I love this state. But
and you live in I think San Clemente is like the perfect city. I lived in the Pier Bowl for 2 years. I lived on Beach Road in Capo Beach for half a year. I just think Capistrano Beach and San Clemente are the best places in the world to live. So I'm glad your daughter's doctors. It's becoming so. You must own your house from long ago and have a Prop 13 imperative not to leave either.
Yes, absolutely. We bought our home for $260,000, and it's worth $2.5 million now.
But you can't tap into it, and you can get a reverse mortgage if you ever need it from like AndrewandTodd.com. Hey, I want to know, Eric, Rich, are you going to tell people to vote no on this constitutional amendment?
Oh, I talk to everybody in the store when I'm fueling up, and I have prior to in all the elections, and I've supported Trump since he's come down that escalator. And God bless him for not forgetting our state. I don't want people outside of California. Most of us are reasonable, rational people here in California, but they have wrestled control of this state. The environmentalists, as you well know, have had I owned a service business here for 40 years, and I finally just gave up on it. Having 200 employees and trying to deal with all the environmental controls. And
Was it on Camino de Real? Where was it? Pico?
No, my business was in Santa Ana, but I have locations all over the Southland.
Well, it is hard. I just saw today, someone sent me, Tom Trabb sent me a note about a business that is simply closing in California. Let me see if I can find it. They posted on X, Bed Bath & Beyond. They're leaving. They're getting out. Not going to do it.
They make it so difficult here. You can't. I have acreage up in Cambria, California. I can't do anything with it. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I had dreams of building a ranch up there when my daughter was young, and it just every which way I go, they throw roadblocks. I tried to start a little business in town. I wanted to open up a little cafe as part of the business, and all I heard was the word no, no, no.
Yeah, I don't think it's really possible to communicate to people how impossible it is to live in California as middle class, upper middle class, even lower rich class. You got to be super wealthy to live in California, and then you don't care. But that's who runs the state, and so has been, and so it will be. Thank you, friend. I appreciate it. I do want to, you remind me to tell people about andrewandtodd.com, 888-888-1172. And I want to tell people about that because there are a lot of folks with home equity like Rich. He bought his house 40 years ago for $2.5 million. It's worth $2.5 million now. Now, I don't know that Rich needs money. It sounds like he worked his whole life, ran a business. But if you do, if your budget is being stretched wherever you are and you've got equity in your house, you can always do a reverse mortgage and take money out of your house. Now, you don't spend that money. You put it to work and you spend 4% a year. That's what most financial advisors will tell you. You take $1 million out of the house, you put the $1 million into T-bills that are earning 5% or 4.5%, and then you take 4% out. So you're just getting income stream. AndrewandTodd.com, 888-888-1172. AndrewandTodd.com. They were Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They're sponsors, but they're friends. I was on a call this morning with Andrew. Wednesday morning is my men's Bible study, and Andrew was on. We were talking about a bunch of other things, but I know they do reverse mortgages. You have to be 62 and older and living in your principal residence, and you still have to pay your property taxes, and you still have to pay your homeowner association fees, but you don't have to pay a mortgage payment ever again. You take the cash out, and the guy to do it with, Andrew Del Rey, Todd Avakian, 888-888-1172. They did my mortgage when I moved back to the Beltway. They've done Dwayne's. They've done people in Salem up and down the coast. They've done thousands and thousands of mortgages and refinances for the listeners to the Hugh Hewitt Show, the watchers on the Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem News Channel. AndrewandTodd.com, 888-888-1172. Let me go to Dr. Stone in Glendora. Hi, Dr. Stone.
Good afternoon, Hugh. Here in the left coast, yeah. Emergency medicine is my background. Did that for many, many years of time. Burned out, but still involved with education. The reason I wanted to call is several things. First of all, God bless you as you faithfully present the truth on that. Several things, if you give me just a few moments of time, one of the things I would say in all the political stuff that's going on, I believe up and behind the political truth, it's not just what I believe is not just a temporal issue, but also a spiritual issue that's going on. And if you'll allow me, several things behind that. If you look at one of the things that I believe we do have an arch enemy of our souls named Satan, and one of the three things that he does is he's a liar, a deceiver, a thief, and a murderer. And if you see those things and just compare those things to what's going on, who's going on whatever side of things, and look at,
Dr. Stone, if you listen to me for a long time, you know I'm a Christian, but you also know it's a secular show.
Yeah. I do know that. And I do know that. I was just out recently at the Reagan Library on that, going through the Ten Commandments, and one of the special exhibition that they had, and one of the things they mentioned was a reference to Molech, M-O-L-E-C-H. Anybody that's listening, I would encourage them to look up who Molech is and what it's about.
Yeah, but what I'm stressing to you is I'm not ashamed of the gospel, but I deal with a secular audience, and sometimes evangelicals, and it sounds like you're an evangelical, don't really know how to approach the secular audience, and they don't know how to win elections. And the way to change a culture, politics is downstream from culture. Pray by all means, but tell your neighbors to vote no on whatever, or vote yes. I'm not sure which is the right way to vote yet, because the Democrats are tricky, because they are deceitful when it comes to politics, and there's no getting around it. Thank you, Dr. Stone. Sarah C. Bedford is senior political reporter at the Washington Examiner. I don't know how she's staying in D.C. during the summer months. Sarah, nobody's there. What do you report on when nobody's there? I'm going to talk to you about redistricting in a second, but generally, what do you do?
You know, there's been so much going on to keep busy, especially on the investigations team with all the Russia stuff that's been declassified from Gabbard, and also, you know, the crime takeover in DC. There's been a lot of investigations on how we even got to this point. So actually been a pretty eventful summer here in DC, all things considered.
You know, I have seen enough pictures of Union Station with the National Guard. Union Station is not really a very pleasant place to pass through on your way to go to New York. Has it really been cleaned up? And what about the tunnels where the homeless are? Are those different now?
I haven't been there, but Pete Hegseth and Vice President Vance went there today to get a cheeseburger. So it was obviously safe enough for the defense secretary and the vice president to make a stop by. And by all accounts, the situation is much improved. It's much cleaner. I mean, you're right. It was an unvisitable place before just a couple of weeks ago, not somewhere you'd want to go, even in broad daylight.
And what was funny about that is Union Station was glorious even 10 years ago. People don't realize that the descent of D.C. into chaos occurred over the last 10 years. Mayor Bowser and her team just were not up to this, and the summer of Floyd really broke the back of the district. So I'm glad to hear it's improving. Let me ask you about the redistricting battles. Are people following this in Congress? Texas is going to add 5 Republicans. California is going to try and amend their constitution to get rid of a constitutional amendment from 20 years ago. I don't know that it'll pass. Probably will. It's a machine out there. Does it take up much time in people's conversations?
I think it's definitely one of the items on the menu of members of Congress who are back home in their districts taking the temperature of constituents right now. But it's interesting because it's something that Democrats are really upset about in Texas, right? I mean, this is one of the angriest they've been, and they've been pretty angry since January. And part of the reason for that anger is I think they've realized how powerless they really are to do any further gerrymandering, because most blue states are already gerrymandered to the maximum extent possible. And so if there's going to be some sort of redistricting arms race, only Republicans are going to benefit from that. And that's the realization that's dawning on congressional Democrats.
Yeah, California may offset Texas 5-5, but nothing's given because California is so badly run and in such terrible shape, they might have a revolution on their hands. But let's just say it's a net zero. Ohio, Indiana, Missouri, Florida, maybe New Hampshire, they can all redistrict. Ohio must redistrict under state law. I don't know that Republicans can hold on to the House, but they have a lot better shot of picking up more seats via redistricting than Democrats do. So I think Gavin Newsom's screwing the Democrats, and Democrats are going to remember that.
Right. I mean, you don't normally have redistricting done in a year that ends in 5. You have it usually after the census. So the fact that you're doing it at this point in time is a little bit unorthodox. But Gavin Newsom is the one that turned this into a partisan arms race when it was just Texas redrawing the maps, finding an opportunity to do so and seizing it. If this does become a tit-for-tat situation, we've already seen Illinois, for example, gerrymandered to the hilt, and it's a heavily blue state. You know, all of the most populous blue states have already done essentially what Texas is doing right now. California couldn't because of its state constitution. If this becomes the norm, Republicans are set to tilt the playing field towards themselves a little bit.
Yeah, I think Danny Perez in Florida would be well advised to go forward and redistrict. He's the leader of the House down there from which it must emerge. I think Ohio's going to. Mike Braun in Indiana, I really think he ought to do it. I think Nebraska ought to get rid of that funky district that sends a Democrat from an overwhelming red state. There is no voting rights impediment there. It is an arms race. And you know what? The stakes are pretty high, Sarah. Would you agree? The stakes are very high?
Of course, absolutely. And the other thing that Democrats are staring down the barrel of is those very populous blue states are hemorrhaging residents, and the biggest red states are gaining residents. So they will have even fewer electoral college votes and potentially even fewer congressional districts to hand out to their friends by the time we get to 2030. So there's a lot of math that just doesn't work for Democrats because of the way the population is shifted, because these states are poorly run.
Yeah, 2032 is going to be here before anyone notices. And boy, when the census is done well, and it was done very poorly in 2020, it's going to shake the country to its roots. It's a fundamentally center-right country. It's not been represented as such because of the fiasco of the census in 2020. But Sarah C. Bedford will continue to read you during the long, hot summer. I'm glad you got stuff to cover. Read her over at the Washington Examiner. Read my column there at dcexaminer.com. Thank you, Sarah. Eric and Rio Linda. Now, everyone who loves talk radio knows Rio Linda. Even though they may be watching me on the Salem News Channel, they know Rio Linda because the great one, Al Rushbo, who built them all, I just have a storefront in it, he used to make fun of Rio Linda a lot. How are you, Eric?
Oh, very good. And I loved hearing Rush make fun of Rio Linda, but I never got him. He said back from the commercial he would explain farting.
I would never do that on my show, and I never promised to do so. So, what are you going to do about this ballot initiative?
I'm not voting for it. And did you hear? They're going to word it so a no vote is a yes.
Well, I don't know yet. I got to read it. I want to make sure. They may change their mind about that because they're already getting heat about trying to trick people, and they're amending the Constitution to remove a people's initiative, which is always dicey to begin with. Congressman Campbell says it's upside down. If they try and trick people into changing the Constitution, that's not going to fly very well. But I'll figure it out once they post it, and once the election is called. Experts will read it, and I'll be able to tell the audience vote no or vote yes. But I don't know yet, and I'm unwilling to say which way to vote. I think it's a bad idea to change a constitution for political partisan reasons. I don't mind redistricting, I really don't. But California adopted a bipartisan commission, an independent commission. It's not bipartisan. It was packed by Democrats. It's already a bad gerrymandered state with 9 Republicans out of 52, even though they're 40% Republicans. But it is what it is, and that's the constitutional way. I just think they're going to pay a price. But Gavin doesn't care. Gavin is running for president. The whole explanation for this is it gets him on TV. He's not upset. He doesn't believe in fascism. He just wants to be on TV. And wants Democrats to think he's fighting hard against President Trump and uses the word autocracy and fascism and all that nonsense that people just say is absurd, because it is absurd, and they know that, and I know that. You couldn't get away with what they do and anything remotely approaching an autocracy, but they do it anyway because it gets clicks and dollars, and we'll defeat it. I really do think we'll defeat it. Thank you, and Real Linda. Haven't talked to a Real Linda in a long, long time. Americans for a Balanced Budget, sponsor mine. They run an important healthcare cost website called StopHealthCostHikes.com. 4 words, no spaces. StopHealthCostHikes.com. The story behind Americans for a Balanced Budget and their website, StopHealthCostHikes.com, is very simple. When the One Big Beautiful Bill passed, it did not include an extension of the tax credits for people who were forced by Obamacare into state exchanges. If you buy your health care through a state exchange, you get a tax credit. Otherwise, you'll be broke. Obamacare is a nightmare. It never was going to work. It never did work. It's an embarrassment. It has destroyed a lot of healthcare delivery systems in America. It has made healthcare more expensive, not cheaper. It has ruined some union plans. It is full of nightmares. We got the Little Sisters of the Poor still being sued by Pennsylvania because they will not provide for abortifacients or any kind of abortion procedures because they're the little sisters of the poor. So Obamacare remains a nightmare, but one of the ways to ease the nightmare for some people was to provide them with a tax credit. And the Americans for a Balanced Budget want to preserve those tax credits, and they want to know if you want to help preserve them, go to StopHealthCostHikes.com. StopHealthCostHikes.com. Because if those health care credits expire at the end of this year, a lot of people who get their insurance through these ridiculous state exchanges will get hammered. So please get involved with StopHealthCostHikes.com. Let me go to Bill in L.A. Hey, Bill, how are you?
Hey, Hugh, nice to talk to you. I haven't talked to you probably in about 10 years.
Oh, good. Good to have you back.
Yeah, you and I used to talk a lot about running. I used to tell you about races in the LA area, and we used to talk about running and like, different parts of the LA
Are you still
area.
going? I am much slower. I used to be a racer. I used to be able to do 7-minute miles, and then it became 10-minute miles, and then it became 12-minute miles. How about you?
I do the Geezer Shuffle, 3 miles every other day.
Well, good for you. The Geezer Shuffle is a shuffle, and it's good. That's trundling. I call it trundling.
I just turned 77, so I'm still in there.
Oh, I will be blessed to be there in a decade and keep shuffling. It keeps your circulation and your heart going.
The Geezer Shuffle, man. But I cycle 4 days a week at a gym, spinning classes, and I do yoga and Pilates and stuff like that. So I stay pretty active.
Do you take Relief Factor?
No, I don't actually.
Oh, come on, Bill. Feel better. I'll do a pitch for it next segment. But tell me what you're going to do about this initiative.
We lost a very good House of Representatives person from the 25th District in California because redistricting took out Simi Valley in his district. And
Mike Garcia
was I worked the phone banks for Mike for about 3
Great
months.
Congressman, F-18 pilot, wonderful man.
Wonderful man. Well, I'm going to try and get in touch with the Steve Hilton for Governor committee, and I'm going to try and work the phone banks for him. So I'm pretty sure that we're going to be strong against the redistricting.
Steve is already out there saying he opposes this. It is changing the Constitution, which the people voted for. And I am going to rely on Hilton to tell me whether a yes vote makes sense or a no vote makes sense, because they're going to lie and trick. I don't know. It will be written in Greek. It'll be like ancient Greek. They never write it. Here's a new map. We want this new map because it favors Democrats. That would be an honest thing, but they won't do that. But I will count on you to call me back, Bill, after your Geezer Shuffle or your spin and tell me what it is. But it's good to hear you. You're one of my Morning Glory runners. You go back that far when I ran the Morning Glory Running Club?
6:30 in the morning or so or something like that when you had a show here?
Yep, when I started with Salem. I was the 6 to 9 guy in California. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I ran a Morning Glory Running Club. We had T-shirts. We aren't that fast anymore, but we are diligent. We are very, very diligent. So get out there and keep working those phone banks. Yeah, and save California. Thank you, Bill. 1-800-520-1234. I might have time for two more calls. I'll tell you about Relief Factor when we come back. But 1-800-520-1234, connection to the Hugh Hewitt Show. When I began the Hugh Hewitt Show for the Salem Media Company, we now are the Salem Radio Network. I've got lots of affiliates that aren't Salem stations. And then we've added the Salem News Channel, which you might be watching. I don't care whether you watch or listen. I just want you listening, either via video or watching. I was a runner, and I was good. I mean, I was good for a 45-year-old guy. And I've been running for another 30 years. I started when I guess I would start when I was 23, but I took a couple of years off because of an injury, hip pointer, came back. But when I started on the radio with Salem, I started the Morning Glory Running Club because I was up early and I'd run before. And we made T-shirts, and a bunch of people like Bill joined it. And I've just always kept running. I just get slower. I still go the same distance. I just get slower. I stopped doing marathons when I turned 50. Not good for you. But I do Relief Factor. And I do occasionally do, quote, a race, not race time. And I run into a lot of septuagenarians and occasionally an octogenarian out there running like Bill, the septuagenarian. I always say, do you take Relief Factor? Got to get rid of the minor aches and pains. It helps your anti-inflammatory system. I am an apostle an evangelist for Relief Factor. And it's because it works. It's all natural. I don't think people should take a lot of Aleve. I can't take any because it's NSAID, doesn't work for me. But there's still ibuprofen and stuff like that. And whatever you do, if you take an over-the-counter, it's not natural. This is Icariin, curcumin, resveratrol, and omega, 4 natural ingredients. The only supplement I've taken for 20 years, the only one I intend to take. And I take it because it works, makes me feel good. When I strain something or when I pick up grandkids too much or something goes wrong, pull a muscle here, get a stretched out limb there, I just double down on the Relief Factor. So I really encourage you to call 1-800-4 and the word relief. It's a 3-week starter pack, $19.95. That's less than $1 a day. And it will really, really work. Thousands of you have tried it. And if you're dealing with any kind of a nagging ache or pain, whether it's tendonitis in your elbow or your back hurts or you got shin splints, I don't think it works on plantar fasciitis. I think that's actually a structural issue. But if you've got inflammation issues, Relief Factor is for you. 1-800-4 and the word relief. Rob in Santa Monica or relieffactor.com. Rob in Santa Monica Bay. We want to know if Santa Monica Bay is different from Santa Monica.
Well, it is because it takes it adds Santa Monica, but it kind of encompasses a whole lot more territory.
Okay.
Especially when there was many of us that are still here of that 40% you hear of that is purple, not blue, and that's the reality. It's insanity what's going on around. But anyway,
we've got we got 30 seconds. So tell me what you're going to do about this initiative.
Well, this initiative is that it's been worked on for a long time from various groups inside. We know that we know what's going to happen on going after it. The Greek, like you're saying, is the hard part. The question is, will those that are pushing at it push hard enough from the inside with the lobbies that are there to stop it? And there's a lot of people with phone banks, things going on. I know Chad, Bianco, all those guys are hammering this across the state. So there is that momentum.
I just want, are we supposed to vote yes or no? I'm no longer in California, so I don't know.
Yeah, the question is, it should be a simple thing, but it won't be. But
we don't know yet. But I'll find out, and I'll tell everyone what to tell everyone in California. And you can trust me, Hugh Hewitt. Rob, good to talk to you.